just so we have something to start off with here, could you give us a brief synopsis of what that book is supposed to be about?
Sure. I got interested in the issue during the run-up to the Gulf War, the first Persian Gulf War in 1991, when there were claims that Vietnam veterans had been spat on, and we, the American people, should not do that again. As our soldiers go off to the Persian Gulf, they need to know that they will be received positively when they come home and not be spat on like Vietnam vets were. I thought that sounded wrong. I'm a veteran of Vietnam. Not only had never seen or experienced any of these spitting stories, but I had never heard of them at the time in the fall of 1990. So I began to look into where and when they first began to be told. I found actually no evidence that such things had ever happened, and actually found no claims from back in the day, that is the late 60s, early 70s, that these things were happening. And so that sort of then piqued my interest. Okay, so where do stories like this come from? And to cut to the chase on that, and I'm sure you and I will go back over a lot of this, then I found that basically these stories they have a mythical element to them. There are things that even if nobody makes such a claim, somebody is going to imagine that this or something like this had actually happened. So there's some people who deal in these kinds of studies would recognize an element of urban legend in that for reasons we don't fully understand, at a certain point in time, certain kinds of stories just seem to spring up like mushrooms in no particular place and under no particular kinds of conditions. But all of a sudden, these stories just kind of begin to circulate. And in a sense, that's where my book goes. I felt that they fit into the mythology that we had lost the war in Vietnam because of betrayal at home. That is, radicals in the streets, liberals in Congress, had tied one hand behind our backs, and so we lost the war mostly because of what happened on the home front. And these spitting stories fit into that. They're a story about how people at home did not support the war, did not support the veterans when they came home, and that kind of became the dominating narrative, and still is the dominating narrative, I think, of the war and why we lost the war. And that narrative has great consequences then, I think, going forward right up to today and right into, say, the Trump movement that wants to make America great again, which takes us back to the 1950s, when some Americans believe America was great, and we lost that greatness in the 1960s, and particularly with the war in Vietnam.